Chapter 7 Section 1-3 Weald or oak tree clay, containing subordinate beds of limestone and sandstone. Sin, Tetsworth clay, order of superposition of the strata, etc., by Professor Buckland. A tenacious clay, varying in color from a yellowish-brown to a dark bluish-gray, and containing beds of limestone and sandstone, succeeds the iron sand deposit. It forms, as its name implies, a soil peculiarly favorable to the growth of the oak, the tract of country in which it predominates, producing the finest timber in the county. The Weald clay appears on the surface, between the outcrops of the iron sand of the forest ridge, and the green sand, and its boundaries are tolerably well defined by the bassetting edges of those formations. Its occurrence is also indicated by the badness of the roads, and the luxuriant forests of oak with which it is covered in many places. It is of considerable extent and thickness. The wells sunk in it are deep, and the water generally of bad quality. This deposit forms a vale from 6 to 12 miles in breadth, occupying the lowest part of the Wealds of Kent and Sussex, and skirting the base of the chain of sand hills situated on the boundary line of the two counties. This vale commences near Penvency, and runs parallel with the northern escarpment of the Downs to Petworth and Haslemere, its inner margin extending to Horsham. It then passes into Surrey, and finally into Kent, where it obtains the same relative situation. This clay is destitute of organic remains, but is well characterized by beds of argillaceous shelly limestone that occur in various parts of its course in Surrey, Kent, and Sussex. We shall now proceed to particularize a few localities of this deposit, and afterwards give a detailed account of the limestone strata, the geological history of which is particularly interesting, from their supposed analogy to the Purbeck. At Swingate, near Plashet Park, in the parish of Ringmer, a well was sunk in the Weald clay, to the depth of 70 feet, and at Mr. Hill's on the Broyle, a well 90 feet deep was carried by borings 40 feet lower. In both instances the water was brackish and unfit for culinary purposes. No organic remains were discovered. The deepest borings in Mr. Hill's well brought up ironstone and sand. On a farm belonging to Mr. John Rickman, at another part of the Broyle, trials were also made for water, but the result was equally unfavorable. To the intelligent proprietor of that estate I am indebted for the following section. Section of strata in the Broyle, near Ringmer, communicated by Mr. John Rickman of Wellingham. 1. Ochraceous clay, becoming hard and untractable when dry, 5 feet. 2. Clay with a thin vein of sand, 5 feet. 3. Blue oak tree clay, tenacious when wet, crumbles very fine when exposed to the sun, a good manure for light sandy soils, 5 feet. 4. Yellowish-brown clay, 10 feet. 5. Clay of a light blue color, 10 feet. 6. Clay of a deeper blue, impregnated with iron, 5 feet. At this depth a spring suddenly burst forth and rapidly rose to the surface. It has continued to flow in a gentle stream, but the water is too strongly impregnated with iron to be fit for domestic use. In an adjoining field, Mr. R. bored to the depth of 60 feet, when the auger became immovably fixed in a hard substance. probably a bed of Sussex marble. Section Sussex or Petworth marble. Sin. Marmor viridi cinereum cochleas refertum. Da Costa's Natural History of Fossils, page 235, number 77. Marble from Petworth, Sussex. Woodward's Catalogue, Volume 1, page 20. 10b60. This limestone is of various shades of bluish-gray, mottled with green, and ochraceous yellow, and is composed of the remains of freshwater univalves, formed by a calcareous cement into a beautiful compact marble. It bears a high polish, and is elegantly marked by the sections of the shells which it contains. The shells belong to the genus Vivipara of Montfort, Helix vivipara of Linné, and are supposed to resemble the recent species of our rivers. Their constituent substance is a white crystallized carbonate of lime, and their cavities are commonly filled with the same substance, presenting a striking contrast to the dark ground of the marble. In other varieties, the substance of the shells is black, and their sections appear on the surface in the form of numerous lines and spiral figures. The Sussex marble occurs in layers from a few inches to a foot in thickness, and these are commonly separated from each other by thin seams of clay, or of coarse, friable limestone. It is frequently found in blocks or slabs, sufficiently large for sideboards, columns, or chimney pieces, and but few of the ancient residences of the Sussex gentry are without them. There is historical proof of its having been known to the Romans, and in the early Roman centuries it was much sought after, and applied as the Purbeck marble was, when cut into small insulated shafts of pillars, which were placed in the triforia, or upper arcades of cathedral churches, as at Canterbury and Chichester. At the first mentioned, the archiepiscopal chair is composed of it. Another more general use was for slabs of sepulchral monuments, into which portraits and inscriptions of brass were inserted. In the chancel at Troughton there is a single stone, the superficial measure of which is 9 feet 6 inches by 4 feet 6 inches, and another in the pavement of the Cathedral of Chichester measures more than 7 feet by 3.5. York Cathedral, Westminster Abbey, Temple Church, Salisbury Cathedral, and most of the principal Gothic edifices in the kingdom contain pillars or slabs of this marble. It is singular that in Woodward's time an opinion prevailed that these pillars, etc., were artificial, and formed of a cement cast in moulds. But, as that author remarks, any one who shall confer the grain of the marble of those pillars, the spar, and the shells in it, with those of this marble got in Sussex, will soon discern how little ground there is for that opinion, and yet it has prevailed very generally. I met with several instances of it as I travelled through England, and had frequent opportunities of showing those who asserted these pillars to be fictitious, stone of the very same sort with that they were composed of in the neighbouring quarries. Numerous examples of the durability of this limestone have been noticed above, yet from long exposure in damp situation it undergoes decomposition, and the petrified testaceae may then be extricated almost entire. The specimens, figures 5, 6, tablet 17, are examples of this kind. The slab delineated in the same plate is of the most compact and beautiful variety that occurs in the southeastern division of the county. Mr. Young observes that this limestone affords a very valuable manure, equal to chalk, and Hasted mentions that a grey turbinated marble, greatly resembling it, is found at Bethersden in Kent. Specimens in my possession from the last mentioned locality are perfectly analogous to the Sussex marble. From the considerable depth in the Weald clay at which this limestone generally occurs, its geographical extent cannot be accurately defined, our knowledge of its course depending, for the most part, upon such sections as are accidentally exposed by the sinking of wells or other artificial excavations. The information thus obtained is, however, sufficient to prove that the beds traverse the county in a north-northwest direction, extending from Curdford, in western Sussex, to Lawton, 6 miles northeast from Lewes, from whence it proceeds eastwardly, and is lost in the alluvial marshes of Pevensey levels. Wherever it approaches the surface, it occupies moderately rising ground, generally on the north side of a rivulet. The following list contains every locality with which I am at present acquainted. Localities of the Sussex marble. Curdford. In the quarries of the Earl of Egremont, lying on blue clay, 20 feet below the surface. North Chapel. This locality is mentioned by Da Costa. Petworth. The quarries are nearly 4 miles from the town, and the marble occurs in a bed of blue clay at the depth of 25 feet. The bed is horizontal and is exposed to view in the ravines. It is divided by fissures into large slabs, fit for tables and other purposes, varying in thickness from 12 to 22 inches, and is more or less compact. Wisborough Green, West Grinstead. Friar's Oak Inn on the Brighton Road. St. John's Common, in blue clay at the depth of a few feet beneath the surface, generally covered with a thin bed of loam. The limestone is of a deeper blue than in most other places, and the slabs, where in contact with the clay, are covered with a profusion of casts of univalves, lying in relief. The pathways leading to the cottages, situated on the roadside from hence to near Cuckfield, are generally paved with blocks of limestone that have been dug up in sinking the neighbouring wells. By an attention to this circumstance, which I have frequently noticed in other parts of the county, the marble may occasionally be discovered in situations where its existence might not otherwise have been suspected. New Close, on Ditchling Common. Blackbrook Wood, beneath a bed of ochraceous clay, 4 feet thick. Plumpton Green, at the south end of the green and to the north of the rivulet. Street Green. It occurs under precisely similar circumstances. Cooksbridge. Plashet Park. A well sunk near a cottage in the southeastern corner of the park gave the following section. 1. Ochraceous loam, 5 feet. 2. Weald clay, 5 feet. Sussex marble, 5 inches. Weald clay, 5 feet. Sussex marble, 10 inches. Weald clay, 9 feet. Sussex marble, 10 inches. Spring of excellent water. Total depth, 26 feet, 1 inch. Short Gate, a well 30 feet deep in the Weald clay, passed through 2 beds of Sussex marble. Broyle Place, in an adjoining field, blocks of the limestone are frequently exposed by the ploughs. Lawton, In digging the foundation of the mansion lately erected by Colonel Downman of the Royal Artillery, a fine bed of Sussex marble was discovered at the depth of 10 feet. It is a very compact variety, and is separated by thin layers of marl into slabs from 6 to 12 inches thick. A spring of excellent water issues from beneath the limestone beds, in a well 30 feet deep. In concluding this account of the Sussex marble, it may be proper to remark that it appeared unnecessary to specify every variation in its texture or color, since these differences are merely accidental and do not affect the geological history of the substance under examination. Organic remains. The fossils of the Weald clay consist only of the shells contained in the beds of limestone, and these do not present much variety. They are referable but to one genus, and consist of the following species. 1. Vivipara fluvorium, Tablet 17, Figure 5-6. 2. Vivipara extensa, Min Conch, Tablet 31, Figure 2. From the apparent resemblance of these shells to the recent helices, Helix vivipara et Helix tentaculata of Linnaeus, the limestone in which they are embedded has been supposed to be of freshwater origin. The correctness of such an opinion is, however, very questionable, since the characters of the fossils are not sufficiently defined to admit of accurate comparison with their assumed prototypes. The analogy between these strata and the upper beds of the Purbeck is so striking that some eminent geologists have been induced to consider the Sussex marble as belonging to that series of deposits. But the testacea of the Purbeck limestone, although corresponding in many respects with the viviparae of the Sussex marble, are of a more slender and elegant form, and certainly belong to a distinct genus. In short, after repeated examinations of the Weald clay with its embedded limestone, in various parts of its course through Sussex, I have no hesitation in stating my conviction that it is perfectly distinct from the Purbeck, and is separated from it by the iron sand formation, as represented in the annexed diagram. A. Weald clay and Sussex marble. B. Iron sand. C. Purbeck limestone. Probably a bed of Sussex marble. The well diggers regard the occurrence of this limestone as a sure prognostic of good water, and assert that where it is absent, the water of the clay is brackish and unpalatable. Marble from Petworth, Sussex, Woodward's Catalogue, Volume 1, page 20, XB 60. Marble from Petworth, Sussex, the ground grey, with a cast of green. 'Tis very thick set in all parts, with shells chiefly turbinated. Some of them seem to be of that sort of river shell that Dr. Lister, History Cochlear, August, page 133, called Cochlea maxima. That Dr. Lister, Hist. Cochlear, Aug., page 133, called Cochlea maxima, fusca sive nigricans fasciata. Several of the shells are filled with a white spar, which variegates and adds to the beauty of the stone. This is of about the hardness of the white Genoese marble. An attempt toward a natural history of the fossils of England, by J. Woodard, M.D. London, 1729, Tome 1, page 20. In the pavement of the Cathedral of Chichester measures more than 7 feet by 3.5. Dalloway's Western Sussex, chapter 26, page 145. In the neighboring quarries, Woodward's Fossils. Loc Cit. Mr. Young observes, Young's Agricultural Survey of Sussex. And Hasted mentions, Hasted's Kent. The bed is horizontal and is more or less compact. I am indebted for this notice to my excellent friend John Hawkins, Esquire, F.R.S., etc., of Bingnor Park, near Petworth. West Grinstead, Friar's Oak Inn on the Brighton Road. These localities were communicated by Richard Weeks, Esquire, F.L.S., etc., of Hurstpurpoint. New Close on Ditchling Common. These localities were communicated by Richard Weeks, Esquire, F.L.S., etc., of Hurstpurpoint. The fossils are not sufficiently defined to admit of accurate comparison with their assumed prototypes. Mr. G. Sowerby has favored me with the following remarks on the specimens represented in Table 17, Figures 5 and 6. I will briefly state that the reasons which induce me to think the specimens in question are not of freshwater origin, and consequently not paludine. After a careful examination, I cannot perceive the least appearance of that kind of erosion, so characteristic of freshwater testicae, and which, though not constant, is in most cases observable in a greater or less degree. The substance of these shells is also considerably thicker than in any species of paludine. Indeed, for size, their thickness is very considerable. These fossils must not be confounded with the vivipara or paludine, so common in the marl that lies over the freshwater beds at Heddon Hill, in the Isle of Wight, and which are distinctly eroded, very thin, and of undoubted freshwater origin. The only recent shells that resemble the fossils you have submitted to my examination are a small species of turbo of Linnaeus, approaching in its characters to Turbo litoreus.